Thanks so very, very much to Pedro. I've got the great pleasure to now introduce our next speaker, Julieta Aranda. Born in Mexico City, Aranda currently lives and works between New York and Berlin. Central to Julieta's multidimensional practice are her involvement with circulation mechanisms and the idea of a poetics of circulation, the perception and use of time, and the power over the imaginary. Julieta's work has been exhibited internationally in venues such as the Guggenheim Museum in New York, where she actually inaugurated a new series Nancy Spector is curating, which is called Intervals. Through eFlux, together with Anton Vidokle and also with Brian, Julieta has developed the projects Time Bank, currently on view as part of the Liverpool Biennial, Pawn Shop, and also the eFlux video rental, which started in the eFlux storefront in 2004 and has toured already to 15 venues. She was one of the participants in our DLD conference in Munich, and you can see her map presentation at DLD online on the DLD website. And Julieta will present here the un-mappable Breadcrumb trails. A very warm welcome to Julieta Aranda.
Hi, the first thing I'm going to do is apologize because I know I speak really very fast. So, yeah, that's it. The invitation to come here and speak about maps made me think quite a bit about my own relationship with space. I have something that could be called spatial dyslexia, meaning that I get constantly lost and cannot find my way to get from one place to another. This is actually so severe that after almost 15 years of living in New York, I still get lost in Manhattan. And that's a city which is laid out as a very orderly grid with the streets and avenues that are numbered out sequentially. Because of this, not long ago, I was offered a GPS as a birthday present by a friend that got very tired of waiting for me. I was very happy with the present at the beginning, but the novelty wore out quickly, and I came out to hate it with passion because the restoration of my sense of orientation came at a heavy cost. What happened is that the GPS started to determine my relationship to space in terms of speed and maximum efficiency. And these are notions that I'm rather averse to. In essence, the GPS took away my chances to get lost, which is something that I then realized I enjoy. It didn't seem worth it, so I gave it back quickly. But what I came to realize is that what happens when I am, so to speak, mapping my trajectory from point A to point B is that I choose non-stationary landmarks. This means that the instructions I give myself to get from one place to another are, okay, make a left there where there are 3 pigeons resting on a tree, and then walk a little bit until you reach those 5 men gathered on the street corner. Then I make a right at the yellow car that is idling on the red light. These kind of instructions create effectively a one-way only map, a trajectory that cannot be retraced and that cannot be repeated. And this is the kind of map that I like the breadcrumb trail made by Hansel and Gretel. I favor the idea of a map that disappears as fast as it is being written, or better yet, an idea of the unmappable. Indirect or errant trajectories that develop according to their own logic and that cannot be captured as data or as readable paths on a simulation of space or on a Cartesian plane. What I enjoy about getting lost is the rupture, the moment when the question, where I am, breaks into my set of tasks and trajectories. And then I have to find myself, confront myself with the world, taking the objects that surround me and establish myself in relationships to them. Where I am, who am I while I am here? These questions impregnate my world for a second and make a disruption in the established relationships of efficacy and production. A break in the act of getting from one place to another, and the taking of the moment, being in a certain place and how that place changes me, so that if I was elsewhere at that instant, I would be a different version of myself. The maps that we use and make are a constant territorialization of space, a definition of reality in terms of the known. They continually generate a set of productive relationships. And when I say this, I'm using the very worst possible connotation of the word productive. The problem is, once those productive relationships become categorically defined as real, the tension and urgency to find another possibility for reality becomes slackened. Out of their very essence, maps are devices that outline power relationships and a kind of obligatory language. They lay out a disciplinary grid, describing and accounting for all of the complex rules that could be involved in any given operation, and the use of the map then becomes related to social situations and power structures. What I believe is that maps should only be used to determine the perimeter of things, rather than the space that exists within those things. Maps should tell us that certain things exist, and even that they have a given shape, but without telling us exactly what these things are, in effect, acting only as markers in space. However, there are maps that try to give us the content of things, accumulations of data, how many hamburgers have been eaten in Kentucky over the past year, how many people use their cell phones at midnight, what is the median age of the average listener of 93.4 FM. For me, those are frightening maps that try to tell us what the world is made of, what kind of relationships exist, formally defining things not in terms of their ontological qualities, but in terms of their use value, as if that was what constitutes the thingness of a thing, how much, how many, how fast. The world is a set of productive relationships, so empty can start believing that what things are is what things do. I was looking at the density of certain maps, not so much because of my being interested on what it is that they were mapping, but in terms of representation. And what they make me feel is that there is very, very little elbow room on their propositions of space. I don't quite know what are these maps of, but they feel very productive. And I mean productive in a capitalist sense, in the sense that they produce predictable engagements. So if I have to think about a map for the future, then what appears to me as a truly urgent thing is to figure out how can a social body resist being reduced and inserted into this disciplinary grid, and to somehow redistribute the situation enough so that all the dispersed black market style activities and engagements that take place in the space of tension of the everyday can continue happening without being classified and entered into a system of checks and balances, and without throwing a dissecting light upon them. Then I would question why it is that we make maps. And we map, and we do it because we want to know where everything is. And that's maybe because we think that we have lost something, that we lost the connection to what we think is the immanent sacredness of the world. But I don't think that this sacredness is actually available. And usually we determine it only in terms of its absence. I think that whether and in what sense this sacredness exists and can be mapped is one question, but the question of whether as a global metaphysical fact, absence or negativity is ontologically prior to positivity is entirely different. The relevant thing here is that this connection to the essential qualities of the world has never been directly available to us. It has always been there, but it has always been something that we have to find. There is no shortcut and there is no way to get there fast. We can find things quickly, but we cannot find the meaning of things all that quick. And a world made of things without meaning is a world made of relationships of production that have no productive value. And the meaning of things is never going to be located in a fixed place. You can know that this thing exists. You can know that this thing has a meaning. But as to what the meaning of the thing is, it is never revealed outright. The meaning has to be produced simultaneously in the object and in the subject. A single-use map that binds the thing to its contextual qualities. The thing will never be the same thing twice. The map that leads you there cannot be used by anyone else because it charts a trajectory that describes the relationship between the thing and he who perceives it in the present. That is something like subject and object fused in a moment. The desire to carve the shape of the future seems to me to take up too much space and to take up also a time that is not even ours. In a certain sense, this leads me to the idea of Jorge Luis Borges when he talks about exactitude in science in the book Fictions. He has a short story where he mentions an empire where the art of cartography attained such perfection that the map of a single province occupied the entirety of a city, and the map of the empire the entirety of a province. In time, those maps no longer satisfied, and the Cartographers Guild struck a map of the empire whose size was that of the empire itself, and which coincided point for point with it. The following generations who were not so fond of the study of cartography as their forebears had been, saw that that vast map was useless, and not without pity was that they delivered it up to the inclemencies of sun and winters. In the deserts of the West, still today, there are tattered ruins of that map, inhabited by animals and beggars. In all the land, there is no other relic of the disciplines of geography. So talking about that as an idea of future of mapping makes me think about our relationship with time, which is somewhat hierarchical. Because we conform to an orderly, to a flow of consequence in which we either aim towards realizing the dreams of the past or to articulate and propose utopias for the future. But we tend to disregard the present, which becomes a situation of infinite delay. So for a map of the future, I want to think that instead of infinite delay, the present can become a space of infinite action that is not contractually bound to what has been or to what there is to come, but is rather a space of freedom which then can become the moment in which a utopia could be realized. Thinking about this, and to close my little presentation, I want to quote a text by Hans-Ulrich Reinberger, which is called Epistemic Objects or versus Technical Objects. And it says, from an experimental systems perspective, the uniqueness and also the precariousness of the relationship between concepts and the things we presume they stand for in the process of research is derived precisely from the fact that these things are in a state or condition such that we simply cannot yet point to them. If we could point to them, they would already have lost their urgency and their essential epistemic value to us. Thus, epistemically interesting relationships between concepts and objects cannot take the simple form of ostension. Epistemic objects cannot yet be pointed to. They have no reference in the everyday sense of the word. If there is reference, it is always only suppositional. Its precise image remains elusive. This is a point of essential tension, and there are two possible solutions to it. The first is that the epistemic object is transformed into a technical object. That is, into a state in which the relationship between concept and object is no longer problematic. This means that within the confines of the accepted standards, the object has become transparent with respect to the concept that refers to it. The second solution would be that the solution becomes itself a problem. That is, that the presumed reference changes its position and becomes the starting point for a further search into an epistemic object. This, of course, is much more interesting because in that sense, objects are invested with meaning and not only named. And thinking about this epistemic, endless epistemic quest would be a good starting point for what I would consider a better map, made up sort of in reverse, thinking about the way navigation charts were before the entirety of the world was fully discovered. And we only had a hint of a coastline and the possibility of land. And using that as a model, I think that this could be something of very good use, a map for everyday practices that does not try to capitalize in relationships of time and space.